Having spent decades developing software to improve the quality of sound in my music collection, I thought it may be a good point in time to actually start spending some time promoting its utility. This is the first in a series of videos, hopefully, depending on whether they get blocked or not, on music I love on recordings I hate. So first up, Porcupine Tree album called Octane Twisted, which is a live recording of their tour for the album The Incident that they did in 2010. Here's the album cover. Just get it in focus for you. There you go. Fundamentally, the problem with this album is threefold. The bass guitar on it comes across as really boxy and rather overblown, so it tends to end up masking a lot of the mid-range and the like. It doesn't have much in the way of the low octave of its bass guitar sound, so it's a very thin bass guitar sound. So ultimately it just doesn't work very well on the album. The drums too sound a bit monotone in their colour. They don't have a lot of depth to them. And again, it probably lacks a bit in the bottom end in that regard. Probably one of the things that I find most disturbing is the overblown transient content in the drums. You can clearly hear that Gavin Harrison is bashing the life out of his drums. You get this massive lead-in transient on any drum strike in it, leading to a drum sound which you can akin to sounding very slappy, what I would call slappy, like if you take a drum stick and hit a pillow or something, like you've got this really sharp transient and then a dead sound afterwards. So those are fundamentally the problems that I want to address. The equalization issues that cover the quality of the drum sound coming across and the bass guitar coming across, I can easily tackle in Harbel Harmonic Balancer, and then the issues with the overblown transients on the drum track I can actually take out using my Harbel Dynamic Processor VST3 plugin. So I'll demonstrate that. Okay, before I go on, thumbs up to Voicemeter, because this is a really useful piece of kit. If you use it, give them a donation, because it's a great bit of software. Anyway, the track I'll look at on the Octane Twisted album by the Porcupine Tree is the Blind House, basically. Noticeable for the strong guitar riff at the beginning of it and various places through it. What you'll note, like if we're looking at the overarching filter and analysis here, the grey plot here is showing the peak spectrum for the original track, and likewise here the average for the original track, and you can see this very pronounced region here that corresponds to the bass guitar, and it's fairly narrow, like it's probably half an octave in width, which gives rise to the boxy sound of the bass guitar. Similarly, you also note there's a bit of a hole down here, so the bass guitar isn't actually producing much below, I don't know, about 80 hertz or something. Not that the instrument isn't generating that, but the bass guitar cabinet isn't, or doesn't appear to be, or depending on whether it's the cabinet or the way it was mic'd or whatever, but it's just not producing much out there. Similarly on the bass drum, you see there's quite a big drop off below, what is it, about 35 hertz or something like that. So there's not much sub bass in the bass drum. Flicking through the various parts, you see I've broken the track up into multiple parts, one corresponding to each I don't know, structural section of the track. So here's the opening guitar riff from here to here, then the first vocal part, then the repeat of the guitar riff, then the next vocal part, the chorus, so forth and so forth, and this long percussive bridge here before the final guitar riff part to finish the track. Looking at each in turn, here you can see the boxy bass guitar looks even more pronounced than before. What I've done is I've trimmed it down so you can clearly see that that's much more uniform now. I've also boosted the sub bass on the bass drum and filled in a bit of this hole from the lack of low output on the bass guitar. Unified the guitars in the middle here to give them a bit more oomph at the low mids and sort of upper mids, I guess. Added some gloss to the top so the cymbals sound clearer and sharper, more impressive. Move on to the next section. I've toned down the bass drum, the monotone nature of it a bit here to give it a rounder sound, a fuller sound, not concentrated on one particular pitch. Again, I've boosted the low bass on the bass guitar and controlled the remainder. Although the bass guitar doesn't feature much in here, I guess some of this probably isn't actually bass guitar related, it's probably more vocal related. Thickened out the upper mids on the vocal part. Here again, in the reprise of the guitar riff, we see the bass guitar going ballistic. And adding the sub bass to the bass drum, and adding uniformity to the distorted guitars and some gloss to the top. Again, bass guitar issues, pretty much the same sort of issues. More bass guitar issues and some gloss at the top. More bass guitar issues. More bass guitar issues. And in the percussive bridge, not much is happening there. I've trimmed a few peaks down there and made it a little bit more uniform, but it's largely the same. Maybe thickened up some of the mid-range and the upper or lower highs, I guess you could call them. And the gloss at the top to add some brilliance. And then we've got the reprise of the guitar riff part. Again, the bass guitar is all over the place, which has been made more uniform, and added the sub bass to the bass drum and the gloss to the cymbals. And finally, that's just the crowd roar at the end, where there's nothing much there, just added some uniformity. So anyway, the next question is, what does it sound like? So here we go. So hopefully you can hear that there's a very boxy character, the bass guitar there, and we've clearly addressed that. We've fleshed out, well, the consequence of that is there's less masking of the guitars, but also the modification in the mid-range that I did has thickened the guitars as well. Okay, well, the other question to ask is what does it sound like in the other areas? So I'll just quickly skip through those now. Dogs will crawl, the vices and the downs, we resist. Free love, feel love, bring love to all my sisters, believe me. Abuse your trust, false gods of their self-hate. Feel love, free sisters, breathe out, threads, believe me.
Hello, Chicago.
Okay, I've set up a new Cubase session with our EQ'd version of the Blind House loaded up. And if you look here, you can see these large transients that, well, in some places they're like, what? Twice as loud as the average level, maybe, oh, actually more than that. So it's like three times the level of the average. So to actually deal with that, all I need to do is insert my Dynamics Processor plugin. We'll just use the mastering preset, but what I will do is I won't include any compression, so I'll keep the existing dynamic range. So the only thing it is actually going to be doing is cutting down on the transients. And to actually view that, well, I've actually set up a loop, but to actually get an idea of what it's actually doing, where is my mix console? Because you'll be able to see the level meter change. So if we play this now, consequence of adding this plugin here is I can actually boost the level by 5 dB, no problem. Not much more to discuss, so I'll leave it at that.